Out of the dark forest, I was hitchhiking from Liège, Germany, to Paris. He was a French man, a somewhat dirty and unshaven driver, small and shabby. He agreed to give me a ride in his car, a ride with him to Paris where I needed to pick up. My paintings were from an exhibition I had there. It was October, I was 30 years old, and he seemed about the same age. He spoke broken English, I spoke no French at all. I really didn't have a clue who this guy was. The day was mild, sunny, and blue. It was a warm and comfortable French day, a great day to hitchhike. It was around 4:30 p.m. when I met him at a gas station somewhere in France. I hopped into his little old car, happy to have scored a ride. We drove off to Paris on the main highway. After some small talk, mainly about where I'm from, he reached over my lap and opened the glove compartment. He pulled out what looked like a bunch of passports. They were passports. He handed me all four. The first was a pretty girl who was his girlfriend and had died falling off the back of his motorcycle, he said. The second was a girlfriend who had died in a car crash. He told me the third girlfriend died from a brain tumor and the fourth fell off a horse. He said, "I'm such an unlucky man." I agreed he was unlucky. The uneasiness started then and only grew as the miles rolled on. He was in possession of 4 young women's passports. Soon after showing me the passports, the man said he wanted to take a shortcut to Paris. It wasn't really a question to me. Excellent, I thought, get me out of here ASAP. I assumed we would cut through some charming French villages on secondary roads, past houses and farms, but no. Instead, we turned off onto an implausible dirt road off the main highway. Oh, I thought. Not good, but I kept silent. Why we keep quiet is a mystery, perhaps because of our dumb manners. At first, the road was out in the open through a field. We rolled over the typically vivid green French hillside until we finally reached the oncoming heavy woods. The road narrowed. It grew instantly darker as we entered the forest. The interior of the forest was creepy. The woods looked like the perfect place to hide something. I still found the woods beautiful and dreadful. It was at this point that my French driver shouted in broken English, "I don't want to speak English anymore." This was definitely not a request. Then silence, uncomfortable silence in the darkening forest. I started to feel a small trickle of adrenaline in my body. My fight-or-flight instinct was warming up. Communication had now officially ended, just silence. I pondered this because I knew I would surely have questions as we would get deeper and deeper into the thickening woods. I knew, though, that I wouldn't ask anything. Nothing. It was now 5 p.m., and the sun was fading fast. The woods grew darker. The driver seemed so tense, and I could tell he was in deep thought. I noticed his lips moving almost imperceptibly. They were rigid, snake-like. I myself had moved my hand to the car door handle, a movement I'm sure could not have been missed. The car was slowing down. It did not say a word. Was I going to die now? Did he have a gun? All these questions ran through my head. My life was now surreal. This was not my plan. Maybe I communicated with my captor in some secret way. Maybe I gave off some kind of male pheromone perceptible only to men. Facing off, I possessed my own rage issues, and I was not going down without a fight. That I knew. There would be no begging or cries of mercy from me, not to this. I also had my own secret store of crazy. I was big and strong at that time, rode tough through my travels, and there's no substitute for my nothing-to-lose stare. That is all I gave him. Something very primitive transpired between us then. I think rather quickly, in a matter of seconds. It's a sort of inner calculus as to whether one can overcome, stop, or kill the other guy or not, and all its peripheral considerations, not the least blood, gore, strength, and alas, dying. I don't think these calculations are the same when a victim is small and scared, begging and weak. I think between those two uneven people, it just becomes bloodlust, power, panic, scratching, and doom. 5:12 p.m. The car was now moving really slow. I entered a very strange and new place in myself. I was transformed with very little preparation, transformed into a potential killer myself, maybe. My chauffeur could read my mind, or my body language, or sense my intent, or see my hand on his dirty door handle. It was the moment of truth, and then we suddenly started to speed up. Thank God. Out of those woods. Odd how these memories have come back to me as I write this. Some memories I'm not certain of. Like, did he say he had to hit one girlfriend with a shovel because she attacked him and would not be quiet and leave him in peace? Did he really explain the 2 backpacks on the back seat? Did I not hear that on purpose? Did I later imagine those words? Did I see more passports in his glove box than the 4 he pulled out? Why didn't I say, "Stop the car," after the passport show? The road began to widen, and we emerged out of the dark forest into the setting sun, dark red and orange in the sky. I could hear and then see the highway. Now I saw tiny houses across the highway. I had no idea where exactly I was. The Frenchman asked me if I wanted to spend the night at his house. We could eat dinner together. A quick film of his filthy torture chamber basement ran through my head. I politely said no. My first words spoken since the order not to speak English. I sincerely think that had I broken that command and blabbered something in the woods, my story might have had a different ending. It all came down to silence. I can be silent sometimes. One needs to be to contemplate the next move. Maybe one of the faces in the passports may not have been able to spring over her nature and started to talk or beg with fear. Would that have fed the killer's darkness as evil? Who really knows? I got out at the side of the highway, and with night settling in, I watched him drive away. I never went to the police because I didn't speak French, and I thought maybe my imagination was just too damn active. I yelled something into the night sky, just wondering what the hell had just happened. It was fully dark now. I was exhausted after that little adventure and soon fell asleep on the side of the highway. The next morning, I was worried about what the new day would bring. I looked at my hands, wondering if I was still alive. Jump ahead 20 years, and I'm teaching a German business student English in a cafe on a boulevard in Liege, Germany. For whatever reason, we discussed the topic of hitchhiking, and I tell him my story. My student promptly whips out his smartphone and Googles French serial killers. Then he shows me pictures. There he was. I was shown a photo of serial killer Patrice Allegre. It was him, all those years ago, me and him on that strange ride. I had never forgotten his face. At that time, in 1990, there was a reported serial killer leaving bodies of girls on the French roadsides and highways. He was in the midst of his killing hobby back then. I had heard about a killer on the loose. My French girlfriend told me to be careful hitchhiking. I've often wondered if the murdered women, other men may have been buried in those woods we passed through slowly. I now wish I had gone to the police and have since subsequently tried. He's in jail, and they're not interested. Maybe I could have helped stop more murders back then. That's heavy on my soul. Since then, I've felt the dark light in my body. Maybe the souls of the girls escaped with me, desperate to get out of the forest. This took place in November of 2005. Each year, my job would give us 10 vacation days. Seeing as I hadn't yet used any this year, I decided to take a week off to visit different states around the US. To get around, for the most part, I would actually hitchhike, which is something I've done multiple times in the past. Despite all the horrible recognition it gets nowadays, I actually really enjoy doing it. I've met a lot of people through hitchhiking that I still call friends to this day. Anyway, it was around 2:30 p.m. I was walking down the road giving the usual thumbs-up signal hitchhikers typically give. It had been a while since my last ride, and I'll be the first to admit I was getting a little desperate. Eventually, a red pickup truck pulled up next to me. Inside were two men. My best guess is they were in their 40 years old. One of them asked me where I was going, to which I responded. They both looked at each other for a second, then back at me, and signaled me to get in. They seemed normal enough, so I tossed my bag in the back, got in, and shut the door. But I quickly realized the whole floor of the vehicle was completely covered in different types of bullets. Before I had time to even rethink my decision, we were already going 60 down the highway. I tried to engage in some small talk to ease the tension, and it actually sort of worked. But somehow, the topic landed on how one of the guys had just gotten out of prison for aggravated assault. A disturbingly short amount of time later, they started asking me how much money I had. This is when I started to realize I could be in some serious danger. Now, I had been hitchhiking for a couple of days by that point. I didn't look the best, so I tried to play it off that I was homeless and had no money whatsoever. This response was met with complete silence. For the next 30 minutes or so, not a single word was said, though multiple times I would catch the driver looking up at me through the rearview mirror. I honestly just tried to ignore it, something I regret doing to this day. Fast forward 20 minutes, and to my horror, the driver turned off the highway and started down some unpopulated dirt road. I instantly shot up and said, dude, where are we going?" After 15 seconds of no response while the car was still driving, I grabbed my bag, unlocked the door, and dove out of the car. Instantly, I looked up to see the red pickup slam on its brakes, shortly after followed by the reverse lights turning on. I cannot explain to you how fast I got up and ran into a nearby cornfield. I ran for 5 minutes when I swear I could hear gunshots behind me. They were clearly distant, but still, I ran for another 5 minutes until I reached the sign for the main highway. I then called the police, explained the situation in my current location, and waited in the cornfield until an officer arrived. I was then driven to the nearest police station, where I filed a police report. Though in terms of descriptions, there wasn't really much I had to give other than two men inside a red pickup truck. I hadn't gotten the license plate number, and I didn't even really see the full faces of the guys or even remember them. The whole situation was no doubt the scariest thing I've ever experienced. I don't completely know what those guys had planned, but I truly believe I could have lost my life that day. While I still hitchhike occasionally, I am now far more cautious in the cars I get into. It was a rainy night and I was driving home from my shift at the late-night diner I work at. It was a quiet shift at work. I had a weird amount of energy still, so I knew I was going to have to pop a melatonin when I got home. I was driving my usual route, a scenic road during the day but majorly dark at night, lacking many light posts. There are occasional little parking lots with cute little strips of stores or family-owned restaurants and shops, and then just stretches of nothingness. And by nothingness, I mean forest. I was passing one of the aforementioned parking lots of a well-known deli, and under a light post was a woman standing out in the rain with her arm held out. She was waving me down. I slowed as I realized it was a slightly older woman who appeared to be in her 50s, maybe. This woman was really tall, like 5 feet 11 inches or 6 feet, but very skinny. I lowered my window and yelled, "Do you need a ride?" She came over to the front door and opened it, chanting how much of a hero I am. I asked where she was heading, and she said just up the road to town. She was soaking wet, getting my car all wet, but I like to think of myself as a good person, and I couldn't, in good conscience, leave another woman out there in the cold rain. However, picking up a random man on the other hand would be a different story. The woman seemed sweet, but I noticed as I looked at her while talking to her that she was missing a few teeth, very, very off-putting. I had to now wonder if she were homeless. She didn't smell or look like a homeless person, though, but the rain soaking her and her clothes could have been masking any scent temporarily. Plus, her hair was so wet that what may have usually been scraggly undone hair could now have been weighted down and straightened by the water. Either way, the woman was smiling the whole time and didn't seem like a threat. We pulled up to an intersection with a gas station on one corner. I pulled in next to a pump, might as well fill up. I asked her if she wanted anything from inside. I was really doing my good deed for the week. She said, "No thanks, honey," so I went inside to pay the attendant for gas and some spiked seltzers since tomorrow was the weekend. When I got back to my car, the woman was gone. I looked around the gas station lot real quick, but it was tiny, she was gone. She must have run off somewhere. I felt slightly bad, feeling like she was some lost helpless woman, but part of me also felt slightly relieved. I filled up the tank of my SUV and was on my way home. When I got back to the house, I went straight inside my apartment, which is the first level of a two-family house. There's a tenant upstairs and me. The front door into the foyer was usually left unlocked, then the 2 doors leading to each apartment were locked. I let myself in out of the rain and into my apartment. I set the seltzers down on the counter. I wasn't that tired yet, so I took a melatonin and tried to go to bed. Even with the melatonin, though, I was having a hard time sleeping that night. My mind was kind of going wild with thoughts, a lot of thinking about that woman I picked up earlier and what happened to her. At certain points, I heard slight sounds from outside of my bedroom, but I dismissed them as sounds from the upstairs tenant. Boy, do I wish I had been more suspicious before falling asleep. I woke up in my dark bedroom, something that usually would never happen when I take a melatonin. I usually sleep like a baby through the night. I sat up, feeling drowsy and really thirsty too. I reached over the table next to my bed for my water, and then I saw and heard something across the room from me. I saw someone crouched in the corner of my bedroom behind a clothing dresser, with their legs folded. I had to be hallucinating it. I shook my head violently and made weird noises. I even slapped myself in the face, and now whoever was in the corner stood up and walked out of the room. I didn't scream, I didn't say a word. I sat in my bed in literal shock. The part that had me questioning my sanity for a bit after the figure was gone was that there wasn't a single sound from outside the room after this, no footsteps, not the sound of a door closing. I grabbed my phone and called my dad. He picked up, confused why I was calling so late. I told him what I just saw, and he said, "Carter, you probably just had a night terror." I stayed on the phone with him as I was continuing to become more awake. I left my room and turned on the lights to the living room outside. It was a small space, there was no one in there. I looked around the entire space and could confirm no one was there. I started to believe that maybe I did just hallucinate it, but still, I slept with the bedroom door locked that night. When I woke up in the morning, I drank some coffee and got dressed for the gym. I went to open the door to the foyer and realized it was already unlocked. My heart sank. Last night, what I saw, was it real? I did another look around the apartment, confirming no one was inside. I went out to my car and opened the back door to put my gym bag in the back seat, and that's when I noticed the damp yellow-brownish stains all over the floor in the back, and my blanket that I always had back there was gone. I wanted to cry or scream. I figured it out. That woman snuck into the back seat last night when I was in the gas station. She either somehow unlocked the door to my apartment, or I mistakenly left it unlocked. I called my dad again, frantically asking him what to do. He said, check and make sure nothing was stolen, and if nothing was, then calling the police really wouldn't do anything. I checked the house and didn't find anything to be missing, just my blanket from the car. I skipped the gym that day. In fact, I stayed bottled up in my apartment for a while after that. I was just genuinely disturbed. I didn't want to live there for much longer after that, and so after that month, I found a new place to live. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.